February 1978, Los Angeles, California. Two children dig enthusiastically in their backyard, searching for treasure that exists only in their imaginations. What they uncover will become one of the most bizarre automotive mysteries in American history. Their shovels strike something hard, something metallic, something that should not exist 4 feet beneath a quiet suburban garden. They brush away soil, and what emerges defies logic. A smooth, curved surface, a windshield caked in mud, the unmistakable silhouette of a car. But not just any car. Beneath layers of compacted earth lies a Ferrari, a 1974 Dino 246 GTS, one of Italy's most beautiful machines, buried like evidence someone desperately wanted hidden from the world forever. Picture yourself standing there, staring at the impossible. A vehicle worth more than most houses, entombed beneath California soil. The questions cascade. How did it get there? Who orchestrated this burial? Why would anyone conceal a machine most people could never afford? The children's father immediately telephones police. Officers arrive expecting a prank. What they encountered defies explanation. The Ferrari is genuine. The burial is methodical, intentional. Someone planned this car's disappearance with surgical precision, with calculations suggesting criminal expertise. The investigation that follows will expose a conspiracy stretching from Los Angeles into the criminal underworld. It will reveal insurance fraud, organized crime, and a scheme so audacious it demanded burying evidence in a residential neighborhood. The perpetrators believed they had executed the perfect crime. They believed the earth would guard their secret eternally. They were catastrophically wrong. This is the true story of the buried Ferrari, a chronicle of greed, desperation, and the astonishing lengths criminals travel to escape justice. What unfolds next will shatter everything you believe about audacity. The year was 1974 when this story truly begins. The Ferrari Dino 246 GTS represented the pinnacle of automotive perfection. Named after Enzo Ferrari's beloved son Alfredo, who died tragically young, the Dino was far more than a car. It was moving sculpture, rolling art. Its sensuous curves, its throaty mid-mounted V6 engine, its staggering price tag that exceeded what most Americans earned in several years. Only the fortunate few could ever dream of owning such a machine. In Los Angeles, a city built equally on dreams and schemes, one particular Dino rolled off the dealership lot straight into trouble. The man who purchased it had money, connections, and serious problems. What he needed was a solution. What he devised would require shovels, darkness, and absolute secrecy. Have you ever wondered what drives ordinary people toward extraordinary crimes? What combination of desperation and opportunity transforms someone into a criminal mastermind? These questions haunt this story. The buried Ferrari was no accident. It was the centerpiece of an elaborate insurance fraud scheme that investigators would spend years unraveling. The criminals believed themselves clever. They believed they had outsmarted the system. They believed that a car, once buried, would remain hidden forever. What they failed to understand was that secrets have a way of resurfacing, sometimes literally. Over the next hour, we will journey through every twist of this incredible saga. We will meet the characters who orchestrated the scheme, the investigators who pursued them, and the coincidences that ultimately exposed everything. Before we continue, I want to hear from you. Comment below and tell me which city you are watching from. I want to know exactly how far this story has traveled, from Los Angeles to wherever you are. Let us discover together how this buried secret finally saw daylight again.
On that unremarkable February afternoon in 1978, the Westchester neighborhood of Los Angeles hummed with its usual suburban tranquility. Children played in backyards, sprinklers kept lawns impossibly green, neighbors waved to neighbors. Nothing suggested that beneath the surface of this peaceful community lay evidence of a crime so peculiar it would captivate the nation for decades to come. The property on West 119th Street appeared ordinary in every conceivable way. A modest single-story home painted in fading earth tones, a garage that had seen better decades, a backyard where patches of grass struggled against the relentless California sun. The residents had noticed something strange about a particular patch of earth near the property's edge. The soil seemed perpetually moist, darker than surrounding areas. The ground sagged slightly, almost imperceptibly. But who investigates dirt? Who questions the peculiarities of soil in their own backyard? Children investigate everything. Children question what adults have learned to ignore. When those young explorers began their excavation that day, armed with small shovels and boundless curiosity, they expected nothing extraordinary. Perhaps buried coins from some forgotten era. Maybe a toy left by previous generations of children. What their implements revealed sent them running inside, breathless and certain they had stumbled upon something monumental. Their father initially dismissed the excitement. Children imagined things. Children exaggerated constantly. Buried treasure existed only in storybooks. Then he saw the windshield emerging from the earth.
Within hours, that quiet backyard transformed into an active crime scene. Police officers, initially skeptical of the hysterical phone call, stood in stunned disbelief as the excavation continued with increasing urgency. Heavy equipment rumbled through the neighborhood. Reporters gathered at the perimeter like vultures sensing something extraordinary. Neighbors pressed against hastily erected police tape, whispering theories that grew more outlandish with each passing hour. Some speculated about mob connections. Others whispered about buried bodies. The truth, when it emerged, exceeded their wildest speculations. As the dirt fell away in great clumps, the full picture revealed itself. A Ferrari Dino 246 GTS, one of the most desirable sports cars ever manufactured by human hands, rested in its earthen grave. The car appeared largely intact, though time and moisture had begun their inevitable destructive work. The distinctive curves, once designed by Italian craftsmen to make hearts race and dreams ignite, now bore the terrible scars of burial. Mud caked every visible surface. The interior showed extensive water damage from years of exposure to seeping groundwater. But remarkably, impossibly, the vehicle remained recognizable to anyone who understood automobiles. The license plates were conspicuously missing, removed by whoever orchestrated this bizarre internment. The vehicle identification number, however, remained intact, and it told investigators a story that led directly into criminal territory. Police traced the Dino back through ownership records to a theft report filed nearly 4 years earlier. In December 1974, someone had reported this exact vehicle stolen from the streets of Los Angeles. The insurance company had investigated the claim, found no evidence of fraud, and paid out handsomely. The case had gone cold immediately afterward. The Ferrari had simply vanished into the night, until 2 children decided to dig in their backyard.
Investigators faced immediate and perplexing questions. Who buried the car, and why choose this particular unremarkable location? The property's current residents had absolutely no connection to the vehicle or its previous owner. They had purchased the home never knowing, never suspecting what lay beneath their feet. Previous owners would require extensive investigation. The timeline would need meticulous reconstruction. But the most pressing mystery concerned the nature of the theft itself. When stolen vehicles reappear, investigators typically find evidence of destruction, dismantling, or resale through established criminal networks. They find cars stripped bare for valuable parts, burned beyond all recognition in remote locations, or shipped overseas to markets where questions go unasked. They do not find them carefully buried in suburban backyards, preserved almost like time capsules waiting patiently for discovery. Someone had expended considerable effort to hide this particular Ferrari. The burial was clearly not hasty or improvised. The hole had been excavated to appropriate depth with heavy equipment. The car had been maneuvered into precise position with evident care. This was premeditated concealment, executed with planning, patience, and resources that suggested criminal sophistication. What makes a person bury a Ferrari? What could possibly justify sacrificing a vehicle worth more than most Americans earned annually? These questions demanded answers that investigators sensed would lead somewhere dark. What detectives would discover next revealed that this Ferrari was never truly stolen at all, and the real conspiracy went far deeper than anyone initially imagined. The insurance claim filed in December 1974 painted a picture of straightforward automobile theft. The vehicle's registered owner, a businessman named Rosendo Cruz, reported his Ferrari Dino stolen from outside his Los Angeles residence. The details appeared convincing. The car had been parked, he had gone inside. When he returned, the vehicle had vanished. A police report followed, an insurance claim materialized soon after. The company investigated with reasonable diligence, but found nothing suspicious. They paid Cruz approximately $20,000, a substantial sum representing the car's considerable value, and closed their file. But investigators examining the buried Ferrari discovered inconsistencies that warranted closer examination. The vehicle showed no signs of typical theft damage, no broken windows, no forced ignition, no desperate dismantling by chop shop operators seeking valuable components. Instead, the car appeared to have been driven to its final resting place voluntarily, positioned carefully, and buried with something approaching reverence. This was not theft. This was theater. As detectives pulled thread after thread from the unraveling conspiracy, they discovered that Rosendo Cruz had faced severe financial difficulties in late 1974. His business ventures had soured catastrophically. Creditors circled with increasing aggression. The Ferrari, once a symbol of success and prosperity, had transformed into an unbearable luxury he could no longer afford. But selling the vehicle legitimately would barely cover his mounting debts. Insurance fraud, on the other hand, offered a path toward financial salvation. He could keep the money and eliminate the evidence.
Cruz, however, lacked the criminal expertise to execute such a scheme alone. He needed partners. He needed people who understood how to make automobiles disappear without trace. He needed connections to the Los Angeles underworld where such services were available for appropriate compensation. The investigation revealed that Cruz had allegedly connected with individuals who operated on society's margins. These were men who solved problems for clients willing to pay premium prices. Their methods varied depending on circumstances. Some vehicles were shipped to foreign countries where paperwork went unexamined. Others were dismantled into untraceable components. But burying a car in a residential neighborhood represented an unusual solution, one that investigators believed stemmed from constraints both practical and paranoid. The property where the Ferrari lay buried had connections, however indirect, to individuals involved in the scheme. Someone had access to the land. Someone knew that construction or landscaping activity would attract minimal attention. Someone calculated that the earth would keep their secret indefinitely. Imagine the night they buried that Ferrari. Darkness providing cover, heavy equipment rumbling through quiet streets. A car worth a fortune disappearing inch by inch beneath the soil. The conspirators must have felt invincible. They must have believed they had devised the perfect crime, one that eliminated every trace of evidence while generating substantial financial reward. But they miscalculated in ways they could not foresee. First, they underestimated the patience of time. 4 years seems like an eternity when you are waiting for heat to dissipate. But properties change hands. New owners arrive with fresh curiosity. Children dig where adults would never think to disturb.
Second, they underestimated the persistence of investigators who would refuse to close the case simply because the car had been found. Finding the Ferrari was just the beginning. Understanding why it had been buried and by whom became the investigators' obsession. Third, and perhaps most importantly, they underestimated how many people knew about the scheme. Conspiracies require cooperation. Cooperation creates witnesses. Witnesses, under pressure, eventually talk. Their first significant breakthrough came from examining the property's ownership history. The West 119th Street location had changed hands multiple times during the years between the burial and discovery. But tracing backward through real estate records, investigators found connections to individuals with criminal associations. The property had not been selected randomly. Someone involved in the scheme had access, either through ownership or through relationships with the owners, that allowed them to bury an automobile without attracting neighborhood suspicion. Construction and landscaping provide perfect cover for earth moving. A homeowner improving their property raises no eyebrows among neighbors accustomed to the sounds of progress. Investigators theorized that the burial occurred under precisely such circumstances, disguised as routine property improvement rather than evidence disposal. The second breakthrough involved Rosendo Cruz himself. Faced with the resurrection of his supposedly stolen Ferrari, Cruz found himself in an impossible position. The insurance company wanted their money back. Prosecutors wanted explanations. His original story about street theft collapsed under even minimal scrutiny. How could a randomly stolen vehicle end up buried in a backyard with no connection to the thief? The implausibility proved overwhelming. Cruz, according to investigative reports, eventually admitted his involvement in staging the theft. He confessed that financial desperation had driven him toward criminal solutions. He explained that he had connected with individuals who promised to make the car disappear permanently. He explained that burial had been presented as the safest option, less risky than overseas shipping, more complete than dismantling. The earth would swallow his problem, and insurance money would solve his debts. But Cruz claimed he had not acted entirely alone. He pointed toward others who had facilitated the scheme, who had provided the equipment and location, who had actually performed the burial while he maintained plausible deniability. These individuals operated within criminal networks that extended throughout Los Angeles, networks that had assisted numerous clients with similar problems over the years. Investigators now faced the challenge of expanding their investigation beyond one buried Ferrari to potentially numerous hidden vehicles. How many other cars lay beneath Los Angeles soil, buried by criminals who had never been caught? How many insurance claims had been paid for vehicles that were never actually stolen? These questions transformed the case from an amusing curiosity into something far more significant. The press coverage intensified dramatically. The image of a Ferrari emerging from a suburban backyard captured public imagination in ways that ordinary crime stories rarely achieved. Newspapers across America ran photographs of the mud-caked Dino being hoisted from its grave. Television news programs featured experts speculating about criminal networks and insurance fraud schemes. The story combined elements that audiences found irresistible: luxury automobiles, criminal conspiracies, suburban settings that could be their own neighborhoods. Neighbors who had lived near the buried Ferrari for years expressed shock and disbelief. They had walked past that location thousands of times. They had watched their children play in adjacent yards. The idea that a $60,000 Italian sports car had been decomposing beneath their feet seemed impossible to process.
Would you have noticed anything unusual? If your neighbor started a landscaping project that involved heavy equipment, would you have thought twice about the activity? Most of us assume innocence in our immediate surroundings. We trust that our neighborhoods contain ordinary people doing ordinary things. The buried Ferrari shattered that comfortable assumption for everyone in Westchester. The investigation continued expanding, but investigators knew they needed more than confessions and circumstantial evidence. They needed to understand the complete network, identify all participants, and ensure that justice reached everyone involved. What they discovered about the broader criminal enterprise would reveal connections that stretched far beyond one desperate businessman and his buried Ferrari. As the investigation deepened, detectives uncovered a pattern that suggested the Ferrari burial was not an isolated incident. Intelligence gathered from informants and cooperating witnesses painted a picture of an organized operation that had been running for years. This was not simply about one car or one desperate man. This was about a criminal enterprise that specialized in making problems disappear. The network allegedly operated through a loose confederation of individuals with complementary skills. Some possessed mechanical expertise and could quickly render vehicles unrecognizable. Others maintained connections to documentation forgers who could create convincing paperwork for vehicles being shipped overseas. Still others had access to properties where burial or long-term storage could occur without detection. Together, they offered comprehensive services to clients who needed automobiles to vanish without trace. Rosendo Cruz, investigators learned, had been referred to this network through intermediary contacts. His financial problems had become known within certain circles, and opportunistic criminals had presented solutions. For a fee, they promised to stage a convincing theft, ensure the vehicle would never resurface, and help Cruz navigate the insurance claim process. The arrangement seemed foolproof to everyone involved. But criminal organizations contain inherent vulnerabilities. They require trust among individuals whose primary characteristic is willingness to break laws for profit. They depend on silence from people who have every incentive to cooperate with authorities when facing prosecution. They assume that evidence once hidden will remain hidden forever. The buried Ferrari destroyed that final assumption catastrophically. Once investigators understood the network structure, they began applying pressure strategically. Lower-level participants faced prosecution for their involvement. Prosecutors offered reduced sentences in exchange for testimony against higher-level organizers. The classic dynamics of criminal conspiracy prosecution began playing out, with participants racing to cooperate before their co-conspirators could secure the most favorable deals. Names emerged from interrogation rooms. Connections became clear. What had appeared as isolated incidents revealed themselves as components of a larger pattern. The buried Ferrari, investigators realized, represented a mistake in an otherwise successful criminal operation. Someone had chosen burial when other disposal methods would have proven more permanent. Someone had selected a location that would eventually change ownership and attract new activity. Someone had gambled on the Earth's silence and lost.
The investigation also revealed the role of inside information in insurance fraud schemes. Successful criminals understood how insurance companies investigated claims. They knew what evidence adjusters sought and what red flags triggered deeper scrutiny. This knowledge allowed them to craft scenarios that would pass initial examination, collecting payments before anyone suspected wrongdoing. How do criminals obtain such inside knowledge? Sometimes through former insurance industry employees who have crossed into criminal activity. Sometimes through careful observation and research. Sometimes through bribing current employees for information about investigation procedures. The insurance industry, investigators learned, faced constant vulnerability from those who studied its operations for exploitative purposes. The broader implications troubled investigators beyond the immediate case. If one criminal network had been operating successfully for years, how many others existed? If one buried Ferrari had been discovered only by childish curiosity, how many others remained hidden? These questions suggested that insurance fraud represented a far larger problem than official statistics captured. Are you curious about what might be buried in your own neighborhood? Have you ever wondered about that strange depression in someone's lawn, that patch of earth that never quite grows grass properly? The buried Ferrari transformed how an entire community viewed their surroundings. What seemed stable and knowable suddenly appeared uncertain, full of hidden secrets waiting for accidental discovery. The case was approaching its conclusion, but significant questions remained unanswered. What ultimately happened to everyone involved? What became of the Ferrari itself after its unlikely resurrection? The final chapter of this story would prove as surprising as its beginning.
The legal proceedings that followed the investigation produced results that satisfied some observers while frustrating others. Rosendo Cruz faced prosecution for insurance fraud and ultimately received penalties that reflected his central role in the scheme. He was required to repay the insurance company the full amount of his fraudulent claim, plus substantial penalties and interest. The financial consequences proved devastating to someone already struggling with debt. Other individuals allegedly connected to the network faced varying degrees of accountability. Some plea bargained for reduced charges in exchange for testimony. Others proved more difficult to prosecute, their involvement harder to establish beyond reasonable doubt. The network itself, investigators believed, had been significantly disrupted by the investigation, but whether it was entirely dismantled remained uncertain. Criminal organizations possess remarkable resilience, adapting and reforming even after substantial law enforcement pressure. But the fate of the Ferrari itself proved perhaps most fascinating to the public following the story. What happens to a vehicle that has spent 4 years buried underground? What condition does such burial leave, and can such damage be repaired? The Dino, despite its ordeal, remained fundamentally restorable. Italian engineering, combined with relatively favorable soil conditions, had preserved the vehicle far better than might be expected. The body required extensive cleaning and treatment for surface corrosion. The interior needed complete replacement, water damage having destroyed original materials. Mechanical systems required careful inspection and rehabilitation. But the essential structure, the irreplaceable core of the vehicle, had survived.
After the legal proceedings concluded and ownership questions were resolved, the Ferrari passed through various hands. Collectors who specialized in unusual automotive histories recognized the vehicle's unique provenance. A car with a conventional history might be valuable. A car that had been buried in a Los Angeles backyard and subsequently discovered by children playing in dirt represented something extraordinary. The story itself added immeasurable value to the machine. The Dino was eventually restored to operational condition by craftsmen who understood both its mechanical requirements and its historical significance. Every effort was made to preserve authenticity while addressing the damage caused by burial. The result was a vehicle that could once again travel roads, though it would forever carry the marks of its unusual journey. Today, the buried Ferrari exists as both automobile and artifact. It represents a chapter in Los Angeles criminal history, a reminder of the lengths desperate people will travel to escape financial problems. It demonstrates how criminal schemes, no matter how carefully planned, contain vulnerabilities that can surface unexpectedly. It proves that secrets buried in earth have a peculiar habit of refusing to stay hidden. The property on West 119th Street has long since returned to ordinary suburban existence. New owners have come and gone. The backyard where the Ferrari once lay buried shows no visible evidence of its extraordinary history. Grass grows, children play, neighbors wave. The surface appears perfectly normal. But everyone who knows the story looks at that ground differently now.
The buried Ferrari teaches lessons that extend far beyond insurance fraud or criminal networks. It speaks to the impossibility of perfect concealment, the inevitability of discovery, the way that truth has a stubborn tendency to resurface despite our best efforts to suppress it. It reminds us that beneath the ordinary surface of things, extraordinary secrets often wait for their moment of revelation. What secrets lie hidden in your own community? What histories exist beneath the lawns and driveways of your neighborhood, waiting for accidental discovery by curious children or construction workers, or anyone who happens to dig in exactly the wrong place? We walk through our lives assuming we understand our surroundings, assuming that what we see represents the complete picture. The buried Ferrari suggests otherwise. I want to hear your thoughts on this incredible story. Drop a comment below and tell me what surprised you most about this case. Did you know such things were possible? Have you heard similar stories from your own area? And please, tell me which city you are watching from. From the streets of Los Angeles where this story unfolded, to wherever you are in the world right now, this buried secret has finally seen daylight. Share this video with someone who loves mysteries, automobiles, or simply incredible true stories. The Earth kept its secret for 4 years, but secrets, like buried Ferraris, have a way of eventually coming to the surface. Sometimes all it takes is 2 children with shovels and unlimited curiosity, digging for treasure they could never have imagined finding.